Happy Sabbath. How are you all? I hope you all enjoy your week. Tonight, I pray that the Lord will continue to bless you, keep you, and may His face shine on you and give you peace. And may His love be felt by you and His protective arms surround you. You know, last week, we studied chapter 7 of Genesis. And it was a description of the flood. It was such a frightening scene. The water poured from the sky. The water bursting out from the ground. More like geysers of molten lava and scalding water squeezed out of the earth's crust. Volcano erupting everywhere. The earthquake, tsunami swell, destroyed lands and killed man and animals. An unprecedented phenomena. The beautiful, lush world that we talked about was gone. No living things left, except 8 persons and a fraction of the pre-flood animals. Can you just imagine how Noah and his family felt when they walked out of the ark? They probably saw wreckage, desolation. They felt the quietness, perhaps eerily quiet, maybe even silence. Wow, it would be frightening, wouldn't it? Later on, I will read to you how Ellen White described the frightening scene. Right now, we will study Genesis chapter 8, starting verse 1, which will tell us what happened after the flood recedes and what did God promise to Noah. So let's read. Verse 1 to 3. Then God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the animals that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the water subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of heaven were also stopped. And the rain from heaven was restrained. So the rain had stopped, and the water no longer bursting from the deep. And God sent a wind to dry the earth, so that water subsided. The whole world only left 8 persons, and some animals, some birds, and sea lives. So what happened to those dead bodies, dead man body and animal bodies? According to Ellen White, as the water gradually receded, the hills and mountains appeared and could be seen. But these mountains were surrounded by huge, muddy ocean. And there were dead bodies of men and animals everywhere. God did not allow these corpses and carcasses to decompose on its own, because it would pollute the air. So what did He do? He sent an intense wind to blow on the earth, and it dried up the waters. And the wind was so big that Ellen White said it even carried away the tops of the mountains, so that the trees, rocks, even gold, silver, precious stone, and dirt all mixed together and piled up, covering the dead bodies. God made the earth a huge cemetery. So how many people were buried? Well, some educators were trying to estimate the pre-flood population. So they guessed, because of their long lifespan, I mean, they live until like almost 1,000 years old. So the amount of people died and buried could be as many as 4 billion. And verse 1 said, God remembered Noah and every living thing. This is not to imply that during the days of the flood, God had forgotten His righteous Noah. The verb remember here means special attention or personal care that God gave to His own, Noah, his family, and the living things. Now let's read on, verse 3 to 5. And the water receded continually from the earth. At the end of the 150 days, the water decreased. Then the ark rested in the 7th month, the 17th day of the month, on the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. So after 150 days, the water decreased and the ark rested on the mountains of Ararat. So where is the mountains of Ararat now? Well, many scholars think it is in eastern Turkey and lying at the outside borders of modern Armenia. You know, Ararat is not a mountain, but it's actually a mountain range. Despite lying outside the borders of today's Armenia, the mountains are their national symbol and has been considered to be their sacred mountain. So the Armenians always consider the mountain range of Ararat their mountain. And you know, in their coat of arms, the Armenians' coat of arms, you know, they even have Mount Ararat along with Noah's Ark there. I'm going to show you the picture. So why the land doesn't belong to Armenia then? Well, the land used to belong to them. But in 1923, I read that a peace treaty drafted between Turkey and the Soviet Union allotted this land to Turkey. The Bible said the ark rested on land for 74 days after the end of the 150 days while the water was subsiding. Let's read on, and I will show you the calculation of how many days Noah was in the ark. Verses 6 to 14. So it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. Then he sent out a raven, which kept going to and fro until the waters had dried up from the earth. He also sent out from himself a dove to see if the waters had receded from the face of the ground. But the dove found no resting place on the sole of her foot, and she returned into the ark to him, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her, and drew her in the ark to himself. And he waited yet another 7 days. And again he sent the dove out from the ark. Then the dove came to him in the evening, and behold, a freshly plucked olive leaf was in her mouth. And Noah knew that the water has receded from the earth. So he waited yet another 7 days, and sent out the dove, which did not return again to him anymore. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the 1st month, the 1st day of the month, that the water were dried up from the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark, and look, and indeed the surface of the ground was dried. And in the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth was dried. So how many days Noah, his family members, and animals spent in the ark? Well, the rain began on the 17th day of the 2nd month of Noah's 600th birthday. And Noah came out of the ark on the 27th day of the 2nd month of his 601 birthday. Calculation. So the first instant at Genesis chapter 7 verse 11 marks when the rain began, which I mentioned. And then 5 months later, the ark rested on Ararat. Verse 4, right? We read that. And 2.5 months later, the mountains were seen from verse 5. And after another 3 months passed, Noah removed the covering of the ark in verse 13. Finally, Noah, his family, and animals went out of the ark 57 days later. On the 27th day of the second month of Noah's 601st and first birthday. So the days between each date, assuming 30-day month, are 150 plus 74 plus 90 plus 57, totaling over 371 days that Noah and his family and the animals spent in the ark. And this calculation is not including the 7 days before the rain actually began. So why Noah sent out raven? Well, Noah used raven to determine whether the land was livable. Even though the ark had run aground, the question would have been whether or not the other land was dry or still in the water. A raven, by nature, will fly directly toward land. Remember the verse said that the raven was going to and fro until the water dried. So as Noah watched day after day, and the raven flying back and forth to Noah, he could determine in which direction the dry land was appearing. So what is the significance of the dove returning with olive leaf? The dove returned. In his beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf, the verse said, right? Olives don't grow in high elevation. And the fresh leaf was a sign to Noah that the water had receded from the earth. Furthermore, the modern symbol of peace, represented by dove carrying an olive branch in its beak, you have seen it, right? So its origin is from this story. It signaled the end of God's judgment. Let's read verses 15 to 19. Then God spoke to Noah, saying, "Go out of the ark, you and your wife, and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing of all flesh that is with you, birds and the cattle, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, so that they may abound on the earth, and be fruitful and multiply on the earth." So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife and his son's wife with him. Every animal, every creeping thing, every bird, and whatsoever creeps on the earth, according to their families, went out of the ark. Noah was told from God to go out of the ark. Go out, this phrase is symbolic. We Christians interpret the flood as a type of Christian baptism, according to 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 20 and 21. You see Noah and his family going out of the ark. They are actually emerging out of the waters of death into a new life. And baptism is our emerging out of the water of death spiritually into new life in Christ. Now let's read verses 20 to 22. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a soothing aroma. Then the Lord said in his heart, "I will never again curse the ground for man's sake, although the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, nor will I again destroy every living thing as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease." Noah built an altar, demonstrated his gratitude to God. It is also an act of atonement. Despite human beings has a tendency to sin, but atonement, meaning forgiveness of sin, is possible through sacrifices. Ever since the time of Adam and Eve, right? You remember Cain and Abel, they offered sacrifices. The Lord regarded this sacrifice as a sweet savor or soothing savor, or more literally, a smell of satisfaction. And God promised never again to curse the ground. And this cursing the ground here is not referring to what he told Adam as cursing the ground for planting for food in Genesis chapter 3. What he's saying here is he will never destroy the earth by a global flood. Genesis 8:22 guarantees that after the flood, the seasonal cycle will continue uninterrupted while the earth remains. That means until the end of time. And this was God's promise, a covenant of God and man. And he used the rainbow as the sign to assure humanity that the world will not be destroyed by water again. So now let's go on to chapter 9. It continues the story. Let's read verse 1 to 3. So God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be on every beast of the earth, on every bird of the air, on all that move on the earth, and on all the fish of the sea. They are given into your hand. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. I have given you all things, even as the green herbs." God commanded Noah to be fruitful and fill the earth, the same command that he had given originally to Adam and Eve. We can see that God's purpose to populate the world did not change. It was to go forth. So as Noah looked upon the powerful beasts of prey that came forth with him from the ark, he was so afraid. He feared for himself and his family because human being was outnumbered by beasts. Human beings were only, 8? But animals were much, much more. And they could destroy them. But the Lord sent an angel to his servant with the assuring message that the beasts would be afraid of him. Even the birds and all the creeping, crawly things of the earth, even the animals in the ocean would be afraid of human. God also said, man is free to eat animals for sustenance because green things have been destroyed. He allowed them to eat the flesh of the clean animals that have been preserved in the ark. Now we can see why the clean animals were 7 pairs and unclean only 2 pairs. Clean animals were needed for sacrifices and for food. Now let's read verses 4 to 7. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is its blood. Whoever shed men's blood, by men his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made them. And as for you, be fruitful and multiply. Bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply in it. Capital punishment was pronounced here. When anyone kills or takes human life, even the animals, they shall pay with their own life. So it was unlawful for man and beasts to take human life. Let me read to you in what Exodus say and what Leviticus say. If an ox gore a man or woman to death, then the ox shall surely be stoned, and his flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall be acquitted. And this one is regarding human who murder another human being. Anyone who takes the life of human being is to be put to death. So now man was allowed to eat meat. But although they were allowed to eat meat, God told Noah that they cannot eat flesh with blood because blood represents life. Let's read on, verses 12 to 17. And God said, "This is a sign of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you. For perpetual generation, I set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be for the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. It shall be when I bring a cloud over the earth that the rainbow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. The waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. The rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will look on it to remember the everlasting covenant between man and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth." And God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth." The sign of the covenant, the rainbow, is the perpetual symbolic reminder of this covenant promise. Just as circumcision of all males would be the Abrahamic covenant. So just now I mentioned, what does the earth look like at this point after the flood? I'll read to you what Ellen White said. The earth represented an appearance of confusion and desolation impossible to describe. The mountains, once so beautiful in their perfect symmetry, had become broken and irregular. Stones, ledges, and ragged rocks were now scattered upon the surface of the earth. In many places, hills and mountains had disappeared, leaving no trace where they once stood, and plains had given place to mountain ranges. These changes were more marked in some places than in others. Where once had been earth's richest treasures of gold, silver, and precious stones, were seen the heaviest marks of the curse. And upon countries that were not inhabited, and those where there had been the least crime, the curse rested more lightly. At this time, immense forests were buried. These have since been changed to coal, forming the extensive coal beds now exist, and also yielding large quantities of oil. The coal and oil frequently ignite and burn beneath the surface of the earth. Thus, rocks are heated, limestone is burned, and iron ore melted. The action of the water upon the lime adds fury to the intense heat and causes earthquakes, volcanoes, and fiery issues. As the fire and water come in contact with ledges of rock and ore, there are heavy explosions underground, which sound like muffled thunder. The air is hot and suffocating. Volcanic eruptions follow, and these often failing to give sufficient vent to the heated elements. The earth itself is convulsed. The ground heaves and swells like the waves of the sea. Great fissures appear, and sometimes cities, villages, and burning mountains are swallowed up. These wonderful manifestations will be more and more frequent and terrible just before the second coming of Christ and the end of the world, as signs of his speedy destruction. So after studying this, what does this chapter and a half teach us about God's character? In the midst of this fierce judgment against the violent crime of man, God is still loving. He showed his tender loving care to Noah and his family. He told them not to be afraid. He will be with them. He will protect them from the ferocious beasts, and that he makes the beasts afraid of man. And I also see that God likes to make promise. He assures man. He knows that man is weak. And he tells them that he will never destroy the earth with flood. And number 2 question. What does this chapter tell us about who we are as human? We are fragile. We are weak. We really cannot survive on our own. We need God. 3rd question. What does it tell us how we should live? We, the weak, need to connect with the Almighty God every moment of our life. Next week, we will continue. Happy Sabbath.